Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Joree Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Joree is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Joree.
Hello, it is Joree Rose, and I am so happy to be back. I've been on hiatus for almost a year now, and to be honest with you, I actually didn't think I would ever be relaunching the podcast. And that was actually okay because there were other things in the pipeline, and I thought maybe it had just run its course. And what I really needed was a big, long rest. And this is the first sign. If you need a sign to take a rest, let me give you permission to do what you need to do, take care of you, because when I did that, it allowed a lot of healing to occur that I didn't even really realize I fully needed. So nonetheless, I am back, and I want to say stronger than ever, but I wasn't going to say more aligned, more purposeful in a revisioning of this podcast that I am really, really excited to share with you, to grow with you, to learn with you, to heal with you, to transform with you. Because here's what I know for certain. If we're not growing, we're slowly dying. And while that may sound a bit dramatic, I'm always a believer that we need to trend in the direction of growth. And there can be so many things that can get us in the way of that direction of growth. And a lot of that's going to be what I want to address here. And not only address it, but give you the tools on how to navigate through it. So if this is your very first time tuning in to Journey Forward with Joree Rose, I will introduce myself and let you know a bit about this podcast. But more importantly, if you're an old fan and a trusted listener, I welcome you back. And with this relaunch of the podcast is not just me going to be in your ear talking about hopefully what you find to be inspirational and meaningful and transformative tools and stories and resources. But what I'm really here for is community. And I'll get to that in a few minutes. But what I'm going to start off with today is sharing my story of what's been going on for me the past few years and what led to the burnout that I was experiencing that inspired me to put the podcast on pause, or perhaps even at the time think I was not going to come back to it. Because if you know anything about me, I really do my best to be vulnerable and to share with you in whatever appropriate way, because there might be varying degrees of what that vulnerability allows me to feel comfortable sharing publicly. But it is really in service of being in service to you and your growth, because here's what I believe. It's really easy for us to think when we're stuck, when we're struggling, when we're facing challenge, whether it be trauma-related relationship challenges, parenting challenges, sense of self issues, transgenerational traumas. There are so many areas in which we feel alone in our story. And my hope is that through this podcast, you not only feel heard and seen and understood, but you also find community to let you know that you are in fact not alone. That maybe what you're going through is, hard for you. And while you are unique, your problems are not. And I can guarantee you that whatever you're experiencing is part of the human experience. And the details are going to be different, but the underlying human experience of emotion and loss and pain and grief and joy and sadness and sorrow and anger and love and connection. This is what it means to be human. And this is exactly what I want to give the space for in this podcast. So part of this reimagining is for me to share more of my life through stories, because I've had quite a few fascinating stories, but it's not the storytelling that I want to focus on. It's the tools or the message or the underlying motivation or inspiration from these stories, and let you know how I got there, because I can tell you for certain, I was not always able to practice self-compassion. I did not always have courage to create change. I was an oversharer, but that doesn't necessarily mean I was vulnerable. I felt fear and anxiety a lot of the time. And I was anxious in my attachments, in many of my relationships. I was carrying the weight of transgenerational trauma that I didn't know just how deep that was affecting me. I am a result of some enmeshed family systems in which I recognized patterns that needed to be broken. So I feel like I've gone through quite a bit. And of course, the details are obviously unique to me, but the patterns of our human experience is what connects us. And that is what I'm hoping for this podcast experience to be: a place of connection through insight, compassion, understanding, in which not just my voice, but many women's voices get to be heard. And I'll talk about that community in just a moment, because it's not going to be through the guests I'm going to have on the show, but how we can interact with one another as a listening community. But first, let me tell you where I've been and what I've gone through. So the past 2.5 years have probably been some of the absolute hardest in my life. And it took a toll on my energy, on my ability to truly focus, my creativity. It really just derailed a lot of my motivation. And I had to give that the space to heal. So for those of you who don't know, I am divorced. I've been divorced for, just over about 10 years now, and had been divorced from my high school sweetheart, and am in relationship with the love of my life, John Schinnerer, who is a psychologist. We do a lot of joint couples work together. If you don't know about our couples work, check us out at loveisn'tenough.net. We also have a joint relationship podcast by the same name, Love Isn't Enough. But about 2.5 years ago, which was about 7 years into our relationship, we started having challenges. And we went through about 6 months of off and on, and then a very short but very, very painful breakup. And that breakup was harder for me than my divorce. It was literally the hardest thing I think I've ever been through. It cracked me open in ways I didn't know was possible, but it ultimately led to some of the greatest healing I also didn't know was possible. But it took a big toll on my nervous system. Well, just after that time period, I think as a result of what I learned in that breakup, I started to gain some courage and greater boundaries in areas I had never had before. And that ended up shaking up my family of origin and me creating new boundaries that I have at 47 years old had never been enacted before, and caused for me a lot of challenge and distress. And it also completely derailed me. And so here I was, just getting kind of my footing under me after the breakup, and then dealing with a lot of personal stuff that I had no precedent to know how to work through. So the two things combined back to back, I can look back now and say that I was in survival mode. And I did survive, and I am through the other side of that, but it does not come without some battle wounds and some scars. I think I hit burnout. I was fundamentally exhausted. I didn't have much motivation. I felt like it was just mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. And I needed to heal. There was a lot of wounds cracked open from the breakup, from the stuff I was experiencing, that with my family, I was looking really, really deeply at, and really even just looking at the transgenerational work that I had been starting a little bit, but it delved me in further into ongoing patterns that I was determined to be in a more aligned and healthy relationship to those patterns. So ultimately, my nervous system was out of whack. I wasn't sleeping great. I think I developed TMJ. I've been having some neck pain for a few months. I put weight on that I just couldn't lose despite what I did. And I was refused to believe that it was menopause related because, yes, that's around my age, but I'm still on hormones. So I shouldn't need to be feeling that unnecessarily weight gain. And I believe it was just simply my cortisol had taken over and everything else felt out of whack. So in this process of me healing, one of the things that I worked at doing was giving myself the permission to not have to do it all. So let me remind you, if you are going through anything challenging right now, as I'm guessing some of us likely are, and if you're not going through it now, you at some point will be facing a challenge. Let me just give you permission to slow down, to rest, to take care of yourself, to not have to do it all, to not be productive, to not meet your goals. This was hard for me to accept because I usually am a bit of a perfectionist, not too far, but I am a Capricorn. So I am goal oriented. I do get really determined. I do get motivated. So to not feel that was hard. So how did I go about giving myself that permission? Coming back to my practices, always coming back to those practices. My foundation of meditation, my foundation in mindfulness, coming back to daily meditation practices, journaling, being really intentional in my journaling. And I actually really have connected with journaling in a profound way during this time. And I'm really grateful for that experience because it really was helpful for me to process a lot of the emotions that I was facing. And one of the things that I did to connect with my journaling was not overthinking it. You know, I've had clients say to me, I tried journaling, but I don't really know if I'm doing it right. It feels like I'm forcing it. And what am I supposed to do? So the way that I would journal during this healing process was I'd ask myself a question and allow my hand just to answer. And it got me out of my thinking mind and into my experience. And it's amazing the wisdom of your hand when you're not overthinking with your head. So an example of a question I might have asked myself, let's say more recently with this neck pain that I've been having, I'd ask, what does my neck pain want to tell me right now? And then I would just write. And it was amazing what would unfold. So, you know, in addition to some of those tangible practices, I've also really been working on setting and holding boundaries, getting out of my people-pleasing tendencies, getting in touch with emotions that haven't been as comfortable for me in my life to get in touch with, namely anger. That was always a really scary emotion for me. I'm an overcoming people pleaser. And I used to always favor connection over honoring the emotions that I was feeling. And ultimately, I learned, yeah, that's not working for me so much. So I have had this about 2.5-year feeling of just kind of being under a rock. And I am slowly emerging out of it. And it feels really, really good. And through that process of healing my pain and going through this journey, I've also developed some tools and frameworks that I actually haven't even brought yet to my clients really so much because I've been trying to hone it in. And this is a platform in which I'm excited to share it. So you'll have to come back and stay tuned for some of the really profound downloads that I've received through these deep meditations and journaling and feeling widely cracked open to tap into, why am I going through this? And aside from the obvious, really beginning to believe that my pain had greater purpose. I know for certain it did with John and I, because we've been able to emerge post breakup with a newfound framework for doing couples work, and it's exciting. And so that has also helped me stay really grounded during all the chaos. And during this time, there were two questions that I kept asking myself that really helped me understand that there was something bigger for me than just going through this pain of these couple of years. And the two questions were, how would I respond differently if I knew this was in service of my higher self or my highest self? And the second one is, how would I respond differently if I knew this was all in divine timing? And it really helped me tap into deeper spirituality and lean further into trust. Because when we're stuck, when we're struggling, when we're anxious, when we're overwhelmed, when we're in fear, when we don't have a working model to know that it's going to be okay or I'm going to be okay, what do we lean on? So for me, I had to lean into those two questions, which ultimately was about trusting the universe to have my back, that there was a reason and a purpose that I was going through all this, aside from the obvious of what needed to be healed on the surface. And it absolutely did, because I have emerged as a more self-aware, compassionate, much more self-compassionate, better listener, deeper insight into relationships in a way that my 25-year career has not given me the masterclass that I've received in real life. And that is a way that I've viewed this a little bit in retrospect, like, wow, that was a masterclass in relationships of all kinds of relationships, relationship to self, relationship to family of origin, relationship to partner, relationship to the past, relationship to trauma, relationship to the future, relationship to the unknown, leaning into the support of my friends and my family. I mean, everything was a lesson for me. And I already thought I was pretty aware, but it's amazing when we are, eating humble pie and sitting with the humility of what I didn't know and what I was too afraid to step into. So I'm hoping that any bit of this is resonating somewhat in how scary and overwhelming it can feel when we're unsure of what's arising and how we're going to get out of it. And I do hope that you find inspiration that, at least in those two questions, how would I respond differently if I knew this was in service to my highest or higher self? And how would I respond differently if I knew this was all in divine timing? And part of that for me was staying present and believing that there's something here for me to learn. And oh boy, did I learn a lot. So eventually, over the past few months, I have felt more and more of myself coming back into normal. I have increased my exercise. I am taking the best care of myself that I ever have, consistent with Pilates, going back to the gym. I've even really felt amazing from taking these peptides from a brand new company called Make Wellness. If you want to learn more about the peptides, there's a link in the show notes about it. But I feel no more brain fog. I feel creative. I feel energized. I am sleeping better than I ever have. So I think it's a combination of all the tools of self-care that I've put into practice. One of the things that, as a result of going through all that has become really tapping into intentionality. And I encourage you to ask yourself the question, how intentional am I in my boundaries, in my actions, in how I spend my time, in where my mind's attention is resting? Because I think especially when we're stuck and we're spiraling and we feel like we're just not getting where we want to be in life, a lot of those things of our intentions go out the window, which can sometimes make us feel worse in whatever it is that we're facing. So it's a practice to be more intentional, but then to stick to it and to honor that your boundaries are deserving to be respected, and saying no more of the time, enacting the self-care like you actually mean it, and believing that you are worthy of taking care of yourself. Because I'm someone who has always taken care of others. So that was a practice for me to really say no. I'm having a boundary on this. I'm being really intentional of my energy, of who I'm around, and making sure that it's supportive to my healing journey. That is almost as important as the work that you're doing, because if you are having some toxic relationships seep in to your energy field while you're trying to do the work around toxic relationships, it's going to be really hard to see clearly what's going on and to maintain the boundaries towards your growth that you know you deserve. So what else does that look like? Decreasing compassion, or decreasing expectations on yourself and others while increasing compassion for yourself, compassion for others. And, part of that self-compassion was trusting that I was going to return to feeling myself again. And I know how powerful the mind is. If I believe I can, then I will. If I believe I can't, then I won't. So it's also a really important practice in mindset when we're facing a challenge and going through, being in the thick of it, of where's my mindset resting? What's the story I'm telling myself about this? Am I telling myself it's never going to end and nothing's ever going to change? Well, if that's what we keep telling ourselves, it's likely that that's what's going to happen. Or are we telling ourselves, I can do this. I got this. I'm working towards growth. I'm working towards healing. It may take time, and I've got this. So, the messages we speak in our own mind are really, really powerful. So again, I really invite you to consider, what are those messages you're telling yourself when you're facing hardship? And are those messages in alignment with where you want to be? Or are those messages facing the opposite direction of where you want to be? It's an important thing to consider. So, and I think for women and for mothers especially, doing any sort of healing work when you're in the middle of facing a challenge, it's hard because we are not conditioned to practice self-care. We're not conditioned to put ourselves first. We feel guilty often for doing the things that we need for us. So many others' needs come before ours much of the time. And that can be a really hard place for us to have self-compassion around. And in fact, one of the things that I often tell my clients when they're working on themselves and they are focusing a lot on self-care, which of course, I just told you all the self-care that I did, and I value self-care. However, there are times when self-care has an opposite effect because we try to attend to self-care and we don't get to it, and it's on our to-do list and we never seem to meet our goals around it. And then we feel shitty about ourselves. And now, aside from what we were already going through, we're like, man, I couldn't even journal. I couldn't even meditate. I didn't make it to the gym. And I didn't even shower today. I'm still in, the exercise clothes from when I thought I was hoping to get to the gym, and I never even got there. And so sometimes those to-do list items of self-care, we've got to be really mindful to see if we're setting ourselves attainable goals. Otherwise, we're going to end up feeling worse. So ironically, there's times where I've told my clients to fuck self-care. Don't add anything more on your to-do list that's going to make you feel shitty if you can't get to it. So start really small. Put one small thing on there for maybe 2 minutes, 5 minutes, something attainable that you have a greater ability to connect with. But if you can't even do that, let that go, and that's perfectly fine. But what takes no extra time and almost has as much of a benefit for you is self-compassion. Self-compassion is the best form of self-care you can do when you're facing a struggle or overwhelmed or burnout or are going through a big challenge. And self-compassion is talking to yourself inside your mind with the voice and the tone and the words that you would say to your very best friend or to your child Because I promise you, you would not talk to your very best friend the way many of us talk to in our own mind. In our own mind, we can be harsh, critical, judgmental. We can put ourselves down. We can even name call. We can shame and blame. We would never, ever say that to someone we deeply loved and cared about. And yet we do it to ourselves. So self-compassion is the absolute best form of self-care that you could possibly be practicing. And I know, because I've talked about this with many of my clients, it's often really hard for us to practice. And we'll be going through so many different tools of how to do all these things. But for right now, if you could have the takeaway to listen to this self-care statement, I promise it will help. So when I'm feeling really stuck, my favorite self-compassionate phrase is to tell myself in this kind of tone, because tone matters, this is really hard right now, and I'm already getting through it. The right now is the key part in that sentence. It's staying present. It's not future tripping. And the already getting through it, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. You have a 100% success rate of getting through every single thing you never thought you could. We got to remember that. That is self-compassion. That is an important thing to hold on to. So, this is, again, what I've been practicing, where I've been at. And it's important to remember to stay present, because the more we spiral into the future what ifs and the unknowns, the harder it's going to be for us to remember. Right now is the key part of that self-compassionate phrase. So this is where I've been. This is how I've been able to get through it. And, I wanted to share that even when our best of intentions to say, I've got all the tools, sometimes we just got to set it down and say, I need a break. And I'm hoping that in my sharing my need to give myself a break, to allow myself to stay feeling stuck a little bit longer than I would have liked, was really important and is one of the keys that helped me to get through that healing journey. It's easier said than done. I drew upon a lot of my tools, as I often do, and it is an ongoing practice. It's never, ever, ever just a one and done. So let's come back to, why am I relaunching the podcast? Well, ultimately, I feel like where I'm at right now, I feel that in my 25-year career, which makes me feel really old because in my head, I'm like still in my early 30s. I feel this culmination of everything that I have learned, everything that I teach, everything that I have taken from my best teachers, which are my clients, everything I've gone through personally, from my marriage to my divorce, to raising kids, to finding the love of my life, to dating post-divorce, going through a breakup, healing from that, dealing with, transgenerational trauma, and understanding how to break those long existing patterns. There's a lot that I'm excited to share in a new way, because I feel the most aligned, authentic, healed version of myself that I've ever been. And I'm sure this is only a beginning step, not the end goal, because now from here, I get to launch into new levels of growth, new levels of awareness, new levels of healing, and deepening connections and relationships from this version of me that is worthy, that is boundaried, that is understanding what my needs are in relationship and allowing those needs to be heard and not put aside in favor of someone else. So all of these things, I just feel embodied in a way that I haven't fully ever been this much. And that in and of itself is motivation and excitement for me to share. And I also feel this bigger purpose being drawn in with this podcast. I think it comes out of a couple of things, of a post-COVID world combined with the, seemingly rapid increase of AI. I mean, I don't know about you, but I look at a video online and I question whether or not it's even real of what I'm seeing. And, after COVID, our ability to connect easily with others felt different. Connection was cut off for a while. And then many people experienced a deep disconnect with how to re-engage in life. It didn't quite feel the same. It was a new normal. And for some, that was harder than others. And now we have this AI coming up everywhere. And at the root of all of that is a disconnect from the human to human connection. And podcasts generally is a one-way conversation. And I have a vision of creating a two-way conversation within this dynamic, being more connected to you, my listener, who has chosen to spend, 30 to 40 or even an hour of your day with me, whether it's while you're out walking or you're in your car to and from your commute or dropping the kids off at school, or maybe it's what you listen to while you're cooking dinner, or you listen with a friend and you talk about how you could relate to what I was sharing or what you learned. I have a vision to go from a passive listening experience to an active learning and growth experience, and having community around to do that. So I envision, engagement and support and women supporting each other and having an enriching, expansive, healing atmosphere in which we have common language and common goals of these words I keep saying: growth, healing, transformation, alignment, and also defining what does that mean for each of us? Because that's going to be different for each person. Because I know I listen to podcasts and I learn something, or I really want to, I hear something deeply moving. And then as soon as the podcast is done, I tend to easily forget what was said and I go right back to my life. So I want to take, from this conceptual environment into something practical and tangible, where you don't just hear it once and hope it made an impression, but you truly have the spaciousness and the resources to take it in on a deeper and more integrated level. So, from the stories that I'm going to be telling, I'm hoping to provide inspiration, but I don't want it to just sound like, oh, well, she did that, and so good for her. I'm hopeful that this can come from if she can do that, I can do that. And I heard her story and I heard her overcoming her challenges. And that gave me the confidence to know I can do that too. And not just that I can do that, but I just now got the resources and the tools or the practices to support that. That's what I'm really excited about. So I'm going to share with you my mission, my belief, my intention, my hope, and I invite you to join me in continuing to make this a reality. So my mission statement for the Journey Forward with Joree Rose 2.0 that we are now in is that this is a platform to share, inspire, motivate, and illuminate the path towards growth, healing, alignment, and abundance. And abundance is feeling the fullness of life. Sometimes people think abundance is money or things. To me, it's the enrichment of experiences. It's when my heart is full. It's when I feel a deep connection to the aspects in my life that bring me joy, that make me feel the best version of myself. That is abundance for me. You can define it how you'd like, but I think abundance is a beautiful intention to be living and working towards. I want this to be a space that's personal and vulnerable and authentic. I envision a community that's a safe place for gathering with a shared intention of creating greater joy, connection, rooted in self-awareness, mindfulness, and humility. Gosh, we all need a little bit more humility. So in my mind, the Journey Forward with Joree Rose podcast attracts the woman who seeks to know herself better and feel fulfilled in who she is at this stage of her life. She's curious, open to learning new ways of moving through life that really promote greater alignment. And one of my highest values is authenticity. She's wanting to be on the path, but doesn't necessarily have the roadmap yet or the community to support her journey. She is a paradox. She is both happy and yet often unfulfilled. She's committed, but yet sometimes just feels like she wants to run away. She is desperate for deeper connection, and yet at the same time is grateful for the relationships she has. She wants more, but sometimes doesn't even know what more even means. She both craves alone time while also really craves meaningful connection with a partner or good friends. She's a caregiver and yet has forgotten or has actually never actually taken care of herself. She's ready to put herself higher on her priority list and yet struggles with having guilt over doing that. She wants time to delve in deeper to herself, but doesn't even know where to find that extra time. She's existentially exhausted and simultaneously fired up and ready because she knows that change is possible. She's unsure how it can be possible and yet knows that not changing, not growing, not healing just isn't an option because she can't tolerate for the next 10 years to look like the past 10 years. And that is a statement I have heard from so many clients that I don't know how it can be different, but I just know it's got to be different somehow. So she is ready. She might be a little terrified while equally excited and exhilarated. She's fearful of how to go through that process of growth and healing and transformation, but is hopeful because she does know deep down it is possible. And so this is the woman who is ready to journey forward. And with that, I invite you to consider which part of that resonated with you. Which of those statements in that paradox are you feeling right now? And if you're feeling just one or all of them, just know you are absolutely not alone. I have felt all of those things, and sometimes many of them at the exact same time. So I am here to support you in feeling seen, in feeling heard, in validating your experience, in sharing mine in the best honest way that I can, maybe not all with full transparency because it is my private life and my relationships, and yet to the best of my ability, will be as honest as I can so that you know you're not alone on this journey. And if you are wanting to be part of the greater Journey Forward community, I invite you to join. So what does that mean? I am creating a membership for those who want to engage deeper. There is a link in the show notes for you to check it out. But there's really two tiers to this. The basic one, which is $11 a month, will have you invited into our exclusive Facebook group, where each Wednesday morning I'll be leading a live meditation, as I believe meditation is the foundation to creating all change. It's where we learn to slow down, to be still, to get out of our heads and out of those narratives, to not over-attach to our thoughts as our truth, and learn to breathe so we can come into our body and learn to trust our intuition and the messages that our body's telling us. Through connection to the breath, we learn to regulate the nervous system. We can calm our brain, calm our body, allow us to respond and not react to whatever is arising. So meditation is at the foundation of all of this. So in our Facebook group, I'll be leading a weekly meditation. But I'm also going to be coming on each week and talking about the podcast episode that came out that week and providing resources, tools, handouts, exercises to go from the conceptual to make it practical and tangible. And then if you want to upgrade to the premium, that's only $22 a month. I call that the action-oriented awakening, whereas the first tier is more of that beginning of spiritual awakening, developing the basis of the tools. And that action-oriented awakening is making the further commitment to look at it as a masterclass series, really, because once a month, I'll be doing a live training over Zoom. Each month of the podcast episodes will have an overarching theme. The theme for this month is you can't change what you're not aware of. So we're starting with basic levels of awareness to see where we are, where we're stuck, creating that vision of where we'd like to be, and identifying those barriers in the way from us being able to get there. And in those live trainings, you will obviously get all the things of the tier 1, but also that's going to give you more direct access with me, time for Q&A, time to delve deeper into questions regarding the tools that support the journey of the theme from that month. In addition to what's happening weekly or monthly, I'm also going to be hosting a quarterly virtual retreat that will have exclusive access just to the Journey Forward community. And those will likely fall around the equinoxes and solstices, because those are very beautiful natural time periods to set intentions, to reflect on the previous season, to tune into nature, to align with the season of where are we at in terms of letting go or resting or growing or awakening or being playful. Because there's much, much wisdom in nature to turn to. And also, I am going to do a live in-person retreat again. I used to lead retreat years ago. It's one of my most absolute favorite things to do. My biggest transformations happened while on retreat. So creating that space in which we consciously are creating the time just for you to delve deeper into the tools in the community to support that journey that we're on. So when you are part of the Journey Forward community, you'll get not only exclusive early bird access to the retreats, but you'll get all of the supporting resources the entire year long to support your journey. So I am thrilled to be on this side of the past 2.5 years. I am thrilled to be back connecting with you, and I am hopeful that you resonate with what Journey Forward is all about. I know that growth and healing and transformation for everyone looks different. And I want to remind you, it is only your life. There's no comparison to anyone else's regarding where you're at. And that's probably a great place to begin, is getting out of comparison mind of where you thought you should be and really tuning into acceptance of where you are. And more importantly, having the clarity to say, if this isn't where I want to be, I have agency, I have choice, and I've now got the communities to support me in this. So welcome back to Journey Forward. I am so happy to be back. I am so happy to be energized and creative again. It feels so good. And I know that there was a time where I never thought I would feel this creativity or alignment. So if you are in that space, let me just be the inspiration to know that not only is it possible, but if you are doing any of the work towards getting there, I don't see how you can't. Because as long as we have the question, what can I do different? Or, what am I even feeling? Even just asking the question, having the awareness is already creating change. And yeah, I think that's all I have for our first episode back today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this has been inspiring for you, if you feel seen in the woman who is on her journey forward, and you know others who might fit that description, who might want to journey forward with you, please share this. And if you do join the Journey Forward community, invite a friend. And if you are already in and you invite a friend and refer them in, you'll get a free month. So I feel it's more supportive to do this in partnership than it is alone, which is why I have such a community building focus, that it's not just me talking to you, it's us talking together and creating relationship with one another in real life, even when it's over Zoom or over a Facebook group, because there will be opportunity for in-person connections. And I was just talking to some clients this week who actually attended my recent spring equinox workshop that I had online, just saying how valuable it is to connect with other women who are on a similar spiritual growth, healing journey, transformation journey, awareness practices, because not everyone is, and there's no shame in that. But when you find connection with people who are in line in the direction that you are, it makes it easier to go through your own. So again, that's my biggest inspiration for being here. And I hope it's inspired you to delve in a little bit deeper and not just be a listener, but be a member of the Journey Forward community. And I look forward to connecting further with you to help us spread the word about the podcast, especially this iteration of it. A rating or review would be most appreciated. And I look forward to connecting with you next week. Episodes will come out each Thursday. And I look forward to connecting further and connecting in a deeper way. All right. Thanks so much for your time today.
To continue your journey forward, find Joree Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joreerose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.